Okay, so now we did the first two layers. Now we need to continue with the third and the fourth. So I'm going to unlock and show the parrot layer. And remember that the layer above it, the leaf, it ends in 140. So we actually want this parrot to start in 120. So remember the last one, how I clicked and then clicked and drag? Well, this time I'm going to do it a little bit different just because I want to show you different options. So I'm just going to insert a keyframe here at 120 by doing F6. And then I'm going to come back to frame 1 of the parrot layer and I'm going to hit delete. Okay? Two different ways to accomplish the same thing. Now I'm going to move my playhead out here to 120 and I'm going to hide that leaf layer. That way I can see the parrot underneath. And I'm going to control click, create motion tween. And I know that I want this to last 80 frames. So 120 plus 80, that's going to bring me to 200. And that is right here. So I'm going to F5 so it lasts that long. And come back here to 120. And I'm going to click on the parrot. And I'm going to add the blur filter, where I'm going to change it to 100. Wow, not cooperating. There we go. And 100. That's it. And then add the color effect of alpha and set the alpha at 0. Move my playhead to 140. Click on what would be the image and return the alpha to 100 and the blur to 0. Then I'm going to come here to 180 because remember I want the picture to stay visible for 2 seconds. And I'm just going to insert a keyframe here because this from 140 to 180 it wants to be visible, or I want it to be visible. And then here at 200 is where I'm going to fade it out, fade and blur it out. Let me see if my blur cooperates with me this time. I don't think it did. No, so I'm going to unlock it. Oops. Command Z. There we go. Now I'm going to unlock it and do 100, 100, and since that's not cooperating, I'm going to make it 99. You see the blur, I want it blurred around all sides. If I left that just as 1, it's only blurring in one place. Then I'm going to drop the alpha down to 0. And now I'm going to lock that layer, and now we're going to work on the final layer. And I want it to become visible at 180. So I'm going to insert a keyframe. I'm going to go back to layer 1, or sorry, keyframe 1. I'm going to delete that picture. And I'm going to hide the parrot layer so that it does not interfere as I'm working on the meadow. So I'm going to control click and create motion tween. I want it to last 80 frames, which is going to bring this last one to finish at 260. So I'm going to insert frames to make it last that long. So now the playhead's back at 180. I'm going to click on the picture. I'm going to add the blur filter of 100 pixels each way. Add the color effect to bring the alpha transparency down to 0. Then at 200, and notice I know it's 200 because it's 1 second later and there's a keyframe right above it, so that makes it easy for me to figure out. And here I'm going to up the alpha and eliminate the blur. We want it to remain visible for 2 seconds, which brings us to 240. So I'll just insert a keyframe there. And then at 260 is where it's going to blur out. Oops. And it did there we go. And fade out. Okay. So now if I hit save, show all my layers, I can hit return and watch how each photo blurs and fades into the next. And you can watch the playhead go along the timeline to see where it goes. And you can see that if you made a mistake, where you'd want to fix it. Now, if you do a control test movie, remember when you do this, it tests the movie and replays it over and over. So now as we watch it, you're going to notice where there is a gap. Remember our final photo was the meadow, and now as it restarts, you see how you have the white space, and we don't want that. We want it to be continuous. So we could do a couple of things, and the easiest thing that we can do is to put an action so that after it hits 250, it's going to go back to where this one starts fading in. Okay, so I'm going to go to my actions panel right here. And first thing I want to do is I need to make sure that the correct thing is visible. Okay, and I want and I'm going to need to do two things. Sorry. I'm going to go back and I'm going to highlight frames 1 through 20 of my first layer. Okay, so that means click, whoops, I have to unlock it first. Click, oops, not click and drag. I need to do click, hold on, let me deselect. Option, wrong key. Okay, so I deselected, there's nothing selected on the timeline. I'm going to hold down my command key and I'm going to click and drag from frame 1, whoops, help me out. Command, click, command, click, and drag so I have 1 through 20 selected. Now I'm going to control click and choose copy frames from my pop-up menu. Okay, then I'm going to go to frame 240 of that same layer. Okay, so that's right here. And what I'm going to do is remember that there's 1 second where each photo kind of overlaps, the blur and the fade. That's how they fade in and out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to control click and I'm going to paste frames at 240. Now you may see that from 80 over you have the motion tween, but remember it's blurred out here at 80, so you don't actually see that frog anymore from 80 through the 240 is when it would start to fade back in. Okay, now this is where we need our actions layer. Okay, so I want to go ahead and I don't want this fade in, fade out to play twice. So right here, I would put in an action. Okay, so I'm going to click on keyframe, or sorry, on frame 260. I'm going to go to my actions panel, and I'm going to type in what I want. Okay, so I'm going to, oh, it says I don't have actions applied to it. So, oh, I know, because I don't have it's a frame. There's no keyframe there. So let me hit an F6. No, not F6, F5. Now there's a frame. Now I can go to actions. There we go. And I'm going to, oh, it's still telling me I have no. Okay, let me make a new layer. Now I'm going to insert a keyframe. Okay, right there at 260. And actually, it's a good idea to usually put your actions on a new layer anyway, on its own layer. That way you can always find them. So an action has to have a keyframe. So there it is. I'm going to go to Actions Frame, and I'm going to uncheck the Script Assist because I actually want to just type it in here. So I'm going to type in go to, and there's no spaces there. And sometimes you have to have a capital. So right there you have to have a capital A and then a lowercase nd, go to and play with a capital P. It turns blue when it recognizes that you've done it correctly. Then I'm going to type in a left parentheses, 21, meaning frame 21, close parentheses, and then a semicolon. That's the period over the comma. Now, when I go back to my timeline, notice how you have a little A in that keyframe. That's showing you that there's an action there, and that's part of why it's a good habit to put it on an actions layer, even if you're only doing one of them. So what this action is saying is that when you get to this frame, it's going to go back to frame 21. Whoops, I haven't reached there yet. Right here, and play, and then it's just going to continue. So what that did is, because we copied this part right here and put it here, it's going to fix that overlap that we saw, that blank space. So I saved it, and now I'm going to hit Control Test Movie. And now, other than that very first piece where it starts, it's going to continuously fade and blur from one photo to the next without skipping a beat. So now you see it went back to the frog at the top. You can't tell where the photo actually stops and starts with the next one because it is continuous. Make sure that you have the Swift file so that you can upload it to your Google site, or sorry, your Google Drive, and link it to your Google site. And make sure that you also have your Flash file saved so that you can go back and revisit it if you need to.